G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on drawing hair. I'm going to roughly go over three things in the beginning of this video, namely volume, shape and flow, and the application to drawing hair and what these things mean. So when I say volume, I essentially mean the thickness of the hair. Wow, this video is already feeling like a weird shampoo commercial. One mistake that I used to make and that I see commonly in people who are new to drawing in general is hair instinctually might be drawn fairly flat. So for example, if I was drawing this guy's hair, I might, kind of draw it something like that. Now that doesn't look terrible, but in terms of volume, one thing that is a very useful thing to keep in mind is to keep the hair fairly separate in terms of, thickness in distance from the skull. So once you do your construction lines for the basic shape of the head, if I was to draw that same hairstyle on this guy, I would leave a thickness. So I'd draw that, front part, but back here, rather than being flat with the head, I'd separate it a bit so it has more thickness to it. It's even more so important when drawing female hair. It's very much one of the most accentuating things about drawing a recognizable person, or our hair makes us look like a different character. If I shaved my head, I would look very different, So with volume on women's hair, if I was to do a simple hairstyle, let's say like a kind of simple girly cut like this, right? This is without much volume at all. As you can see, it's fairly flat to the head, but by simply thickening it all up a bit, so when I draw it, just having it sit over and kind of at a distance from the construction line of the skull, you can see that it looks a little more thick. It looks like it has more substance, is the point, and that's what I mean by volume. So shape is simply the it kind of is like the construction version of the hair. So it's nice to have an idea of when you're drawing hair. So let's give this guy a hairstyle like let's say an army sergeant, right? What I tend to do is I first would think about this shape along the forehead. We have this sort of widow's peak shape, and that's the shape I begin with. And then from there, when I draw the hair, I kind of branch it out of that. So I said army sergeant, didn't I? It's a little more short and snappy. There you go. So using very stylized shapes, things that are easy to replicate, and things that hold themselves and seem to kind of have their own silhouette and have a strong shape. So for this hairstyle, it's this at the front here. An example for a female hairstyle of something that would work is shape-wise having, let's say, a front sort of fringe that kind of curls to the side like that. And that alone is a very distinct shape. And the rest, as long as it works in context with the hair that's already there. Oops, that looks terrible. It becomes a little more iconic. So using a simple sort of shape to work with can help. And we'll get to more examples of that in a moment. And then finally, flow. Now, when I say flow, this can be applied to the basic texture of the hair. Is it short and curly? Is it long? Is it completely straight? So let's say, for instance, this guy here, if he was an emo, you might have like completely spiky, straight kind of flow. That sort of thing. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, you might have, this girl might have sort of really tight curls. And keeping that consistent, because that alone makes a big difference when drawing hair. Now, the reason I've outlined these three key points from the beginning, like I mentioned, hair, however it's done, very drastically changes what the character looks like of what, whatever you're drawing. So, like I said, someone bald or someone with emo hair or frizzy hair, changing one of these three things, volume, shape, or flow, drastically changes how the character ends up looking. So in applying these things to a bunch of different example statuettes, I'm just going to go through my process in drawing hair on these characters and kind of essentially what goes through my mind as I do so, and hopefully you'll be able to get something from that, and I'll just share a few tips and tricks. So I'll begin by drawing shorter hairstyles. I tend to divide the hair, when I draw hair, into three basic parts: the front or the fringe, the middle, and the back. So when drawing short hair, with women, it's difficult. If you're drawing a woman with very short hair, you want to make sure she as a woman looks quite feminine, unless that's not what you're going for in the character. But if you want them to look, female and feminine, having very short hair is a difficult thing to put off. And you can pull it off if you use some specific shapes or things that add the femininity. So for instance, if I'm drawing short hair on this woman, I might get sort of shapes that have a when you go to a hairstylist or a hairdresser, and they every now and then you see that hairdresser who has just really wacky hair, like they do it themselves, and it's like their designer hair or whatever. Okay, that's kind of what I'm going to be going for here. So just go for the wacky sort of. Okay. So in adding, I think waves in general, wavy shapes, anything that kind of flows like that, it is a feminine sort of attribute. So as you can see here, the first thing that I drew was the fringe, and on the male, if I draw, let's say, short curly hair for this guy, it's always nice, I find, to have some sort of a feature part of the hair. So if I'm drawing short curly hair on this guy, you might give him that little Superman curl at the front, and something as simple as that might be all you need to bring out the stylization of the hairstyle. As for the rest of the hair, it often works quite well to simplify. So you'll notice that when I draw these hairstyles, something I tend to do is leave a lot of empty space. That works in the sense that it's good to work with stronger shapes and not so much have too many busy lines cluttering it, because then it just starts to look really messy. So if I was giving this guy short and curly hair, you kind of work more to the silhouette than anything. So you want to make sure that we use shapes like curls to accentuate the fact that that's the kind of hair he has. But you don't want to make it too busy, if you're drawing lines in the middle of the hair, it's going to be in places that accentuate that shape. So it might be on the sides. Rarely is it going to be in the middle unless it's a very thick or very different sort of hairstyle. So doing a sort of medium length-ish hair now. Let's give this girl a don't know what you call it. I don't know names for these things. I'm not a hairstylist person thing. Okay, so as you can see, the shape that I'm working with here is the very sort of brushed to the side thing, and we have this clump of hair at the front, which is this fringe sort of area. And let's pull the rest of the hair back and add some body to the hair. And let it start flicking out and adding to the silhouette down here. There we go. So like we have this forehead shape of the fringe, and when you work with something quite similar, you don't necessarily need too many lines to make the image too busy. Otherwise it can just get confusing to look at, really. Alright, so now with this guy's hairstyle, I'm going to give him one of those bro hawk things. I don't know what the technical term is. Whenever I do hair that doesn't have a fringe or you know, kind of works away from the forehead, I tend to be drawn to outlining this widow's peak sort of shape first. And then everything after that I make to flow from out of this area. So for this hairstyle, we kind of have these split ends in the middle area. And to make this hairstyle work, you kind of need to bring it away from the skull a little bit to add some depth. And I think I drew it a bit too close. So if I just kind of bring that up a bit. And then the lines that I add are only lines that add to the shape, the form of the hair, which happens to be this sort of weird mohawk shape. I don't know why people do their hair like this, but whatever. This is more about creating characters than doing hairstyles that we think are good. Okay, a couple more examples. Let's get a bit longer now. I'm going to give this girl hair parted in the middle. I'm going to make it fairly straight. Straight hair on women, when it's long and flowing, can very much add to a slender aesthetic. So, you know, there's this image that kind of comes to mind of, you know, that straight hair girl wearing a turtleneck sweater and glasses reading a nerdy book. You know what I mean? Like there's that weird sort of softness that comes to mind. I'm quite unarticulate today, aren't I? Like say one word and get halfway through saying word and then finish it later. Okay, I don't want these things to look too much just like big noodles, so I'll split the ends a bit. And then I'll bring this hair back. Oops. Here we go. So as you can see, even though this hairstyle is very flat and very sitting very flat on her head, it still is quite separate from the skull anatomy, from the construction lines of the head. So this guy, we've done curly hair, haven't we? Let's go the good old mullet. So, starting with that sort of widow's peak thing, having the hair bunch up at the front, and then having it get longer and curl at the back. So adding those sort of shapes. Let's give him some sideburns. That looks pretty sexy. I'll have to do another video tutorial on facial hair at some other point, because yeah, drawing facial hair is very different to approaching normal hair. So as you can see, with this mullet hairstyle, it's easy to create the aesthetic and feel of what the hairstyle is, so this mullet, without too much line work, without it being too busy. You know, because if I start to add too much up here and then start to add to the shape, it just really gets messy. Just gets cluttered really quickly. All right, let's go the seductress hair. So let's give this lady some. Let's have it parted here. Let me think. Yeah, that shape feels like it works all right. It evokes the image in my mind of Jessica Rabbit. So I'm gonna have the hair sit quite high on the head, and have this hair flow out. Now, something that works very well for very feminine hairstyles is hair that flows over the shoulders like that. It adds to a sort of elegant feel. And when you're drawing hair that hangs on women, so for instance, when I have, like, I'll just redraw it here, but when this falls down, it always feels nice to just kind of flick it at the end, because we have the length of the hair is pulled down by gravity because it's weighing down, but at the very end it's so light that it just kind of flicks back up. And yeah, see, I've kind of subconsciously done it on most of the hair where it's longer. As soon as it falls at the very end, you just flick up the tip. So there you go, with our seductress hair there. And then let's give this guy the beach bum hair. Okay, so this hair is essentially when I draw medium length hair, I suppose like cross between Beach Guy and Aragorn off of Lord of the Rings. You got there's a thickness on top, but when we get about halfway in this back area here, we layer it. So we have it start to flick out and end there, but then it goes on just a little bit more. Just that last little bit. Oops. You have to, I tend to draw and redraw a lot of my lines because a lot of it is improvisation, and you'll draw a line and not feel right about it, and then you just go back and redraw it until it feels right. So you have this guy's fringe hang over. There we go. This line is misplaced, so just have that come down. And this looks a little weird to me. There we go. And this is a bit short. I'm going to make this longer. So like I said, very much improvisation. You know, so it's very much about testing shapes, testing line weights and flows. And in the end, as you can see, all of these hairstyles, which were just pretty much shat out, easily create a character aesthetic very quickly. And when you're designing a character and a hairstyle often comes with that, work with strong, you know, shapes and as in our first list, you know, give them strong shapes, make sure that they have volume and that it looks like real hair, because as dumb as it might sound, hair is important on the character. and make sure it flows consistently. So if it's curly hair, make sure all of the hair is curly. You know, it looks a little bit weird to have fairly straight hair and then just have a random curly bit. You know what I mean? So yeah, I ask, what do you call them? Questions you can't answer over the internet, but I ask them anyway. I hope you learned something from this video tutorial. I enjoyed doing it. Make sure that if you enjoy the videos that I create, that you subscribe to my channel, and feel free to give any comments or suggestions or requests for tutorials, and I'll add them to my list. I always add tutorials to my list of ones that I haven't done yet. So thanks for joining, and until next time, bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. Links are below to download the original files for reference. Remember, if you animate or draw something cool, be sure to share it on Newgrounds.com, the internet's best source for animations, games, art, and music. Until next time, see you later.